Tragedy is extreme loss. Something terrible has happened. And that is terrible. It is terrible that a woman lost her husband and that 2 children lost their father. What I don't consider terrible is that someone died for their faith. What I don't consider terrible or tragic is that someone died for truth, because this has been happening for a long time. People dying for truth. This has been happening for a long time. People dying for what they believe.
That's impossible.
Let me tell you what I believe.
But your weakness is not your technique.
Yes! Yes!
Don't think you are. Know you are.
The Impossible Life Podcast.
I mean, you're sitting on a winning lottery ticket.
An idea that is fully formed, fully understood, that sticks.
This is the Impossible Life Podcast, because Nick and I are attempting to live impossible lives. What we know is that nothing is impossible. So instead of using impossible as an excuse to not try, we'll use the pursuit of impossible as an accelerant for greatness. If something's never been done before, that just means it's unexplored. If they tell you it's too hard, it's just waiting to be simplified. Impossible is a default label used by uncourageous people unwilling to take a risk. The real truth is this: the solution to any impossible task starts with this question. If I had to, what would it take? What would it take?
Welcome to another episode of the Impossible Life Podcast. I'm your co-host, Nick Surface, and I'm looking across at a man whose first confirmed knockout was of a low-level male nurse after he was circumcised on the day he was born. That's right, friends, the former Navy SEAL, Garrett Unclebach, a man who came out of the womb battle-ready. Do you remember that, or was that just instinctive?
Yeah, I blacked out.
All right. Well, did you? Okay. Well, hey, I'm glad that you stuck it to that guy, because, that hurts. I can imagine. Anyways. So today's episode, I was proud of that one. I thought it was funny, but whatever.
That's silly.
Okay. Anyways. Yeah. So today we're looking at what I've called this internally, and I don't know if this will be the final title, is a warrior's response to tragedy. And obviously, if you're living in America, and even if you're not, because I know I've been messaging with friends around the world, we're recording this 4 days after Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And there's been a lot of reaction to it. And we're not a current events podcast. Like, I remember when we first started this, you said very clearly to me, you're like, we will never say anything that doesn't hold up for all of time. And I was like, there went like 98% of my ideas for what I thought we should talk about. But that was because I didn't have an understanding of principles. And so I understand that now from a much different place. But I say all that to say, like, we're not a current events podcast, but here's what's going to happen in life. You're going to have pain. You're going to have adversity. There's going to be things that don't go the way that you planned. And when those things don't go planned, we say that they're tragic. When someone dies before we think that they're supposed to die in our mind, because we have this timeline, we call that a tragedy. And these things are going to happen. And so, like, you need to have an understanding and a thought process of how to approach this. And I think you, in particular, Garrett, bring such a unique perspective, having truly been, you are a warrior. And I would think most people would agree with that, because in every sense of the word, from whether you're looking at it spiritually or whether you're looking at it from an actual, like, physical war, you've done it, right, to the most extreme level. And so I want to share your perspective with people, because I think it's one that men need to have. I'll say men and women that they need to have. Because what I've seen a lot, and I'll just speak from my own experience, I got a text from my best friend saying, like, Charlie Kirk's dead. I can't believe it. And I was literally, Pastor Josh and I were 15 minutes away from recording the podcast we released last Thursday, and it just popped my bubble, man. I felt so incredibly deflated. Like, I couldn't believe it. I looked. I then went and watched the video, which is, it's shocking that you can watch that in so many different angles, but that's the world we live in today. And as I was looking at this, man, I just felt deflated. Like, of course we did the podcast, we focused in, because there's, you don't stop because of something hard happens. But I just felt so deflated. And since then I've seen so many different responses. And, there's been, I don't even want to talk about people who are on the opposite side and think this is somehow they're celebrating this. But there's been a lot of reaction from people, from mourning, tears. Some people are saying, like, this changes everything. Now it's okay to attack people like this. And when I was looking at this, I really just prayed like I always do. And my prayers are not, I would say they're not the kind of things that you hear where you're like, wow, that was a really great prayer. I just talked to God very honestly. And I just said to him, I said, Lord, Charlie's life was clearly so full of purpose, but this death feels so meaningless. Like it just does not feel like that I was just being honest with him. And the Holy Spirit just guided me to look up what happened to the 12 disciples. Because when Garrett and I were prepping for this, what I said righteous men have died literally since the beginning of time. We had righteous Abel, was the fourth person in the history of the timeline of the Bible, and he got murdered by his brother. And I think we can look past this because we have, especially in America, or I know most of our listeners are in America, we have a very good life. People live to 78, 79 years old. You have your grandkids, maybe some retirement. Like, we have a very normal timeline for how things are supposed to go. Well, I just want to read this real quick, and I'll be very quick. I want you to realize if you are, I say this all the time, I feel like we get caught up in our own story, our own family lineage. And I really hope that if you're out there, that you have a thought process that you are part of a greater lineage than whatever your last name is. You are part of the spiritual lineage truly from the beginning of time, from Adam to David to Jesus, right? And so on and so forth, and all the disciples. Like, that is the lineage that we carry. And if you're not thinking that way, understand the family that you're a part of. We are literally, we're God's kids. As you so rightly put it, G, God has no grandchildren. So we are all God's, if we're God's children, we're all part of the same family. Well, here's how your family members, some of the most famous family members died. These are the 12 disciples, or I should say 11, because we know what happened with Judas. Peter, crucified upside down in Rome at his own request because he didn't feel worthy to die the same way as Jesus. Andrew, crucified on an X-shaped cross. James, the first apostle martyred, he was beheaded by Herod Agrippa in Jerusalem. John, he's the only one to believe to have died a natural death of old age, and obviously he was exiled to the island of Patmos. Philip, tradition says he was crucified or stoned in modern-day Turkey. Choose from those two options. Bartholomew, ancient accounts differ. Some say he was flayed alive, which is literally getting your chest cavity split open, and beheaded in Armenia. Others that he was crucified upside down. Either way, awful. Matthew, reportedly killed by the sword in Ethiopia, although some say he was burned or stoned. Like, these are your options. Thomas, speared to death in India while preaching the gospel. James, tradition says he was pushed off the temple pinnacle in Jerusalem and then beaten to death with a fuller's club. Thaddeus, clubbed to death in Persia. Simon the Zealot, crucified in Persia, or others say he was sawn in half. And Matthias, the one that was chosen to replace Judas, he was stoned and then beheaded in Jerusalem once again. And so I sit there and I look at this and I go, man, this is the spiritual heritage and the history that we have. And what I felt the Holy Spirit was saying to me is, if we're only to hope for this life, it's like Peter said, or like Paul said, then we're to be pitied more than anybody else. So if it's just about this life, if we don't have an eternal perspective, then none of what we're doing makes sense. Because why would you go to that kind of death, or why would you live sacrificially and be ridiculed and stand for something when it's really like, well, it didn't really do you any good? Well, clearly that's not what we're about. And so I wanted to set that tone for everybody today because I want us to remember. I think it's so important that we remember what the story is and what's actually happening in life, because we can get so distracted with all the day-to-day. And I'm not criticizing anybody, nor am I, because I'd be stoning myself at that point. We all get distracted. We all have things that are going to take our attention that will try and keep us from remembering. But we need to remember we are running an eternal race, and we are part of something so much bigger. So with all that said, G, I want to dive into the Warriors mindset. But before we do, you and I talk about this privately, sheep and wolves. And we had Colonel Grossman on episode 165. And I think this is so important because it's such a good picture of understanding society. And because when something like that happens with Charlie, what happens is people go, oh my gosh, like it kind of like, I can't believe there's someone out there that would do something like that. Like it violates so much of what our normal everyday routine is. And I think the sheep and wolves that Lieutenant Colonel Grossman talks about.
If you haven't listened to that episode, you must go back and listen to it, because Colonel Grossman, it's his concept. He's the one who teaches this. Colonel Grossman teaches at West Point. His book, or he did at the time, his book is read by most military officers, all special operators, and he teaches this understanding. It's a great analogy for this is what most of life is. Most people are sheep, and it's not sheep in the cultural, political,
stupid followers. Yeah.
Definition. His definition of sheep is normal, productive, non-violent members of society.
Right.
Sheep are interesting mammals in that they don't have sharp teeth. They have no claws, right? Like there's, some animals that really don't have much defense.
Right.
And sheep are one of them. They can't even kick that hard. Right. Like they're just food.
Right.
And that's what his definition of a sheep is, just, productive, nonviolent members of society. Okay. And that's the majority of people, vast majority of people on the planet are and fit in that category. Then there are the wolves, and the wolves are those who prey upon others, who feast upon others. The wolves eat sheep. And then there's a third, and there's the sheepdog. The sheepdog stands in between the sheep and the wolves. But here's the thing. A lot of sheep don't like sheepdogs.
Right.
It's because sheepdogs have teeth. They have claws. They're violent, just like wolves. The only difference is their nature. Sheepdogs are the only ones standing in between sheep and wolves. Sheepdog don't have a lot of necessary regard for the sheep's opinions or for the sheep's feelings, but the sheepdog knows that it is his job to protect the sheep from the wolves. And that's who he's paying attention to. A sheepdog might, and this is just digging into the analogy a little bit, a sheepdog might make a sheep uncomfortable.
Yeah.
A sheepdog might treat a sheep in a way that, hurt that sheep's feelings. But he is most concerned with, there are wolves out there and I can't let them get to these sheep.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people's response this week, I think, or initial reaction, and again, this is not a shot at anybody, but it's a nonviolent response, right, to a very violent interaction. When things like this happen, it reminds people, the way I said it at Mighty Men, is it pops a lot of people's bubble.
Yeah.
Right. There's for most people, there were two reactions this week: the loss of a hero of faith and a political hero, but also that their bubble got burst. And because sheep like to pretend, sheep don't like sheepdogs, and sheep don't like wolves either.
Right.
Because for most of a sheep's life, it is just grazing the fields. Right. There's not that's the normal life of a sheep. And sheep like to pretend that wolves don't exist. When a wolf does come and take a sheep, they all just run.
Right.
They don't go back for him. They just forget that person was ever there. Right. Because all they know is like, well, I just like to graze on grass and I want to keep my normal life. And so sheep don't like to talk about wolves because there's nothing that sheep can do about wolves.
Right.
And so when something like this happens, it bursts people's bubble and they realize we live in a violent, terrible world.
Yeah.
And when people like Charlie die, I feel like there can be somewhat of a sheep response, which is, oh, this is so terrible. This is so tragic. What are we going to do? It would be as if the sheep got a little bit close to the sheepdog and we're just starting to like one of their own. Mm-hmm. And then you see a sheepdog killed by the wolves. That's exactly what Charlie was. Charlie was a sheepdog. He fought for truth. He fought for faith. He fought for religious liberty. He fought for political action. And when someone like that dies, it shocks people, and oftentimes you can have a tearful response to it, like, man, oh, why did this happen?
Yeah.
But what sheepdogs know is that violence is required.
Yeah.
This is the nasty part of life. Sheep want to believe that violence isn't a part of life. Sheepdog know that it is. Oftentimes we like to see the wolves get killed, but sometimes the sheepdog get killed as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when we were talking about this, because so many people, I mean, you talked about people's reactions for crying or whatever it would be. You saw a lot of big reaction on social media. And I hearken back to like 9/11 as far as when something like this happens, people talk about, we'll never forget. They make big declarative statements, I think oftentimes from a place of emotion. And I understand that. But what you said was, I thought is, you said a lot of people respond from a good place because they just don't know what to do. Right. Because like you feel this indignation, like, man, I've got to do something because this is shocking, but you don't know what to do. So people just end up going to social media and kind of dumping feelings or, dumping their feelings to other people. And then once that fades, it's kind of like, it just becomes, I don't know, like maybe a pinpoint in the map of their life where they're like, man, that was a horrible thing. And like, that really made me think, you know what I mean? And
most people are trying to how do I process?
Yeah.
How do I process my emotions? When I was on the battlefield, and if someone on my team is killed or I'm shot, I wasn't thinking, man, how do I process this?
Right.
How do I need to personally deal with this? It was my last thought.
Right.
My most important thought was, what do I need to do right now?
Right.
What does the mission require of me?
Yeah.
when you make it about you, and that seems like harsh, like, wow, like, okay, a hero died, like I'm just responding to that. I'm not saying that people are bad or wrong or even weak for that, but what I am saying is that the Warriors' response is, what do we need to do?
Right.
I shared this at Mighty Men, but there's a memory that I have that this week brought me back to, because you know what? Here's what is tragic. What is tragic is that a woman lost her husband and 2 children lost their father. Yeah, that is tragic, because what is tragedy? Tragedy is extreme loss. Something terrible has happened, and that is terrible. It is terrible that a woman lost her husband and that 2 children lost their father. What I don't consider terrible is that someone died for their faith.
Right.
What I don't consider terrible or tragic is that someone died for truth. Because this has been happening for a long time. People dying for truth. This has been happening for a long time. People dying for what they believe. And I was brought back to a memory this week of a guy's funeral that I was at in the SEAL teams. And I went to multiple guys' funerals. And this one particular man's funeral, at the end of the funeral, there's we'll go up and we'll take the trident off our chest. And, we all line up to do this. And this man's mother was just sobbing uncontrollably. And it's something I'll remember till the day that I die. And it was hitting all of us, honestly. And this Master Chief turned around and looked at all of us and he says, you don't shed one tear. Right? Like, she gets to cry. You don't get to cry. You have a job to do.
Right.
Right. You go up there and you look strong for this woman, because she wants to know that strong men are going to go out there and continue her son's legacy, not that you feel sad like she does. You have a job to do.
Yeah.
And like that, it just snapped everyone too. And I think that's a great remind. Like, so that's, I'm sad for Erica. I'm sad for Charlie's children. I'm not sad that Charlie died as a hero for his faith.
Right.
That is something to be, it's the same way that I felt at every funeral that I was at, like so much honor for these men. So much reverence and respect for the price that they paid. And what I was also reminded of is, I shared a legacy with these men. I didn't give my life for this country, but I share a legacy with many men who did. And every single one of the men that I served with were willing to do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And so the only thing that should shock you is if you find yourself amongst ranks, like what would have been, here's a different reaction. What if I had been at that funeral and I start thinking like, oh God, what if this happened to me?
Right.
No, every single man that I was at that funeral with, they said I would pay the same price.
Right.
And if that's not your reaction to what happened to Charlie this week, it's a wake-up call for you. And that's where your bubble's been burst. But if you can at least say that, then you should live so.
Yeah.
Right? For the rest of us, after those funerals, except for the men who were the pallbearers, the men who were very close to the family, the rest of the hundreds of us that were at that funeral, we went back to work and we probably did a second workout that day at the end of the day, right? Because there's a duty for us to do. And so just divide what's happened. Yes, it is tragic that Charlie's life was cut short, but Charlie lived an incredibly meaningful life.
Yeah.
A tragedy, and this is what most of what this podcast is addressing. I'm addressing what I think the tragedy is most of the time on this podcast, and it's men who live empty, unfulfilled lives. And that's the exact opposite of what Charlie did. So all we can do is hats off, round of applause, honor, and take a knee for Charlie for the great life that he lived.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of what we're typically addressing on this podcast.
Yeah, well said, G. So we're going to get into some specifics of the Warriors' reaction and the mindset for pursuing destiny. But we use the term warrior, and I feel like we need to define it a little bit, because it's in our culture at Mighty Men, we have shirts that say warrior on them, and we have different things like that. I think it's used more in our culture at our church. I don't feel like the term warrior is thrown around. Like, you think about warrior, people will be like, oh yeah, this guy's a warrior, and it'll be sports, like he's a UFC fighter, or he's like this football player that can like take a beating.
Yeah, and the other there's UFC, and then the other fight league is Bellator,
right?
Which is it's also the name of my construction company, but Bellator is Latin for warrior,
right? Okay,
right? And it's warrior or fighter.
Okay,
and that's what most people equate like warrior to, is assaulter, someone who can do violence.
Yeah.
right? Which is why Colonel Grossman's distinction is so important, because he separates the two. Sheepdog and wolves are both people who can do violence.
Yes.
Right. I've known that about myself since I was little. I see it in my oldest. She has, I struggled with friends from the time I was like 5 to 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Because I was just like too aggressive. I would have friends, like I would go play with friends and they wouldn't want to play with me. Not because I was mean spirited, but because I was extremely aggressive and violent. And but by the time I was like 9 or 10, I was like, all right, if I want to have like any friends in life, I might need to nature this ability within myself. And the difference between sheepdog and wolves, they're both violent creatures, but the sheepdog, the warrior, fights for a different purpose.
Right.
And this is the distinction of what a warrior is. A warrior is not someone who can do violence. A warrior is someone who fights for others. You fight for something greater than yourself. You've heard me talk about this. It's one of the things that I found in every candidate who made it through Hell Week. I asked them, how did you do it?
Yeah.
And they told a story of something that wasn't them. And I asked any of the men, every man that I talked to that quit, they told a story about themselves. Mm-hmm. Warriors fight for others. Warriors are sacrificial. Warriors are extremely mission focused. Just like I said, like I when I was on the battlefield, I wasn't thinking like, oh man, how do I process my pain? How do I process this situation? No, when I was on the battlefield, the only question was, what do I need to do next?
Right.
The only question is like, what does the mission require of me?
Right.
And if you have signed up for the kingdom assignment, for the kingdom mission, what we live in this pretend bubble world of America, which is like a few 100-year blip in history where things are going really well.
Yeah.
Like even in a world like this week where one of our, Christian heroes is killed, we've got it pretty good.
Yeah.
This is the one. When was the last one? Right? And you can the fact that you have to think about that tells you how great of a time we live in.
Yeah, it's a good
But
point.
for most of history, people like us were killed all of the time. Right? It was just another week, like, oh, who got murdered for their faith this week? Mm. Right? That's not the world that we live in. But if you find yourself amongst the ranks of people who truly want to fight for kingdom, you should look at Charlie's life and say, I'd be willing to do the same.
Mm. Yeah, very good. Now, what you assumed there, and you said it, you talked about how when you're on the battlefield and something happens, you're going, what's required of you, is because you're on a mission. You have a mission focus, and you understand, like you're focused on the right things and understand why you're doing what you're doing. And that's what I was talking about, where we can get so distracted with things and not remember the story of what's actually happening. When we were preparing, you gave a great scripture. You said Jesus was the ultimate example of having mission focus, of understanding why he was here. And it's John 5:19. He said, very truly, I tell you, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can only do what he sees his Father doing, because whatever the Father does, the Son also does. Jesus was never like...
He lived his entire life on kingdom assignment.
100%.
His entire life, he says, I'm here to do the work that my Father sent me to do.
Yeah.
Now, when you have that context, like this is what you see before he went to the cross. He even spoke to his Father. His Father, this is a terrible thing you're asking me to do.
Yeah.
If it could pass from me, let it be so. But not my will, but yours be done.
Yeah.
His question is, what's required of me? That's what that question is. He's like, is this really required? If it's not required of me, please don't ask me to do it.
Right.
But if this is required of me, I'll do it.
Yeah. So he had that mission focus, which we've emphasized, but he also had an understanding of what was at stake. Can you tell? You told a story about whenever you walked into Team 3 as the new guy for the first time, what you saw, and I think this paints the picture, because I said before this, understand the family you're a part of. When I read about James and Peter and John and all these disciples, and now add anybody in there for the history of time, understand that that's part of your family. This is not like some guys that you're like, oh, that was tough for them. That's what you're a part of.
Yeah, similar to like being at one of those funerals. The first time I walked into SEAL Team 3, now all of the there's a lot of legacy all over the SEAL compound. There's we've talked about it once before on here. There's a giant rock, like literally a giant rock that is a tribute to Michael Mansour, and it's like an unliftable rock. The rock would probably weigh 4,000 or 5,000 pounds. It would take a massive forklift to lift it. And there's a plaque on there that says, "The secret to buds is under this rock," but the rock has Michael Mansour's name inscribed on it. So the compound is full of tributes to SEALs who have died serving. But it was different. The first moment I walked into SEAL Team 3, walked into my platoon space, it's basically like the office for the platoon that I had joined. And all around the ceiling in this office were just a bunch of picture frames. The entire, like, you know, where the wall meets the ceiling up at the top, all around the ceiling was just picture frames. And these are picture frames of men who have given their life fighting for this country. And it was all the SEAL community. It wasn't, there's a lot of people from other communities who have given their life. It was all the SEALs who have died fighting for this country. And it just kind of makes things a little bit more perspective when you realize, like, man, this is the job that I just signed up for. This is the team that I just became a part of. Some of the people who were, whose pictures were on that wall had worked in the very same room that I was working in. Like, I'm sitting in the seat of some of these people who, like, years ago, this person sat in the seat that I'm sitting in now, and he died serving for this country. And so that gives you a different perspective of the job that you're in. And I think, like I said, I think a lot of people's bubble gets burst when things like this happen because they don't realize the office that they work in.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, and that was the thing, is that we can get to the point where we, like, the point of our life is to live to 80 years old and have retirement. And that's really what we kind of, without realizing it, we make that sort of our guiding light. Like, well, you know, I've got to go do this meeting. I've got to go do that meeting because if I don't have retirement, like, and we don't think through it that clearly, but like, we're doing all these things. It's like, what do you really, are you trying to make sure you have enough in your retirement to pass down to your kids? Is that the point of your life when you die?
The mission in the SEAL teams is to serve and to do as you're asked, right? To do what's required of you. That may mean die.
Yeah.
You don't, but it's not, oh, well, I want to work here. I just don't want to do that.
Right.
You don't get to choose that.
Yeah.
You're either all the way in or you're removed from the program. And I think a lot of people get this, like, pick and choose mentality with their faith of, like, well, I want to serve God, I just don't want to do it that way.
Yeah. I mean, you said it so well that Charlie died a hero because he ran his race. And he I mean, like you said, we can look at him and go, okay, man, none of us saw that coming. But man, to live right up into the end.
He lived. So what, for all of us, I think if you're listening to this podcast, you can say, like, I want to live a full life.
Yes.
I want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. You don't hear that because you made it to 75.
Right.
Now, some of us may make it to 75, may make it to 90 or 100, and you serve God all the way to the end, and you hear, well done, good and faithful servant at the end of a long life. Good for you. What a gift that'll be, right? And you'll just be so grateful the whole time, and I hope you're tendered in wisdom for every extra year that God gives you. But whether it's 30 years or it's 100 years, you're going to die.
Yeah.
Right. We've talked about this before. The only question is, what are you going to die for?
Yeah.
And it is just like I think about my friend Charlie Keating is the same. Like, I look at his life with such respect and reverence because he died doing exactly what is. There's no question. No, like, when someone dies in a car accident, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, man, how do we deal with this? Like, and especially when someone dies in a car accident, maybe their life wasn't going in the direction that it should have been going.
Right.
There's no question for Charlie Kirk, that he was doing exactly what he died on his battlefield.
Yeah. Legitimately.
Right? So nothing but honor and greatness for what Charlie did with his life. And yes, you can say his life was cut short. That's not for us to say.
Right. Yeah, that's true submission to God. What you just said right there is that it's not for us to say. The piece of clay does not get to look at the potter. It says in both Isaiah and then the Apostle Paul quotes it later.
It's a hard thing to wrestle with. Okay, so God has relationship with each of us individually, but when you look at the Old Testament, like, God started with Abraham, but then God developed a relationship with a people, not just a person.
Yep.
And so God has relationship with all of us. And so this is one of the, like we talked about, great help and context understanding on this is the podcast we did a few episodes ago on both.
Right.
Understanding how God is both things. God has both a relationship with you and a relationship with his people. And God's plan is not centered around me. It's not centered around Nick. It's not centered around you listening to this podcast. God's plan is not centered around you. And so sometimes, right, like, what you think the plan should be isn't what God thinks the plan is. And the only way that this is, when I was in the military, I had commanders and it's like, your plan sucks. I don't like your plan. I have a way better plan than that. But I didn't get to choose. Right. I got to submit and I got to follow the plan. And if we're thinking anything like, God, this is so terrible. God, why did you let this happen? Is that really what you think happened? That
Right.
God's like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
It's not what happened.
Yeah.
Right? God allowed this. He allowed it to happen. And we don't know the reason that God allowed it to happen, but he did. And if the creator of the universe allowed it to happen, then it must be the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. So just to reiterate, because I do want to move into the Warriors' mindset and the reaction to the Warriors' destiny. And just to say, we said, what is a warrior? We said he has mission focus. He has an understanding of what's at stake. And you highlighted the first thing you said was he loves, he battles for others. And we didn't reference this, but it's John 15:13, which is greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Jesus was the ultimate warrior. He's the ultimate example of what a warrior is. So if you're wondering what is a warrior, look at Christ. Like, Jesus fought for other people. He was there, very mission focused. He, if you're looking at what we talked about in Sheepdog, he did not mind upsetting people with what he said because he ran his race until the end. And so I just want to be real clear on what a warrior is, because I think it's
you can string a few scriptures together there and start to see how, like, man, this is one of the most wonderful things that you could do, is to give your life for your faith. Because the Bible says without love, you have nothing.
Yeah.
And it says the greatest love you can have is to lay down your life for your friends.
Yeah. So good. All right. Well, I want to dive into this, G, but real quick, I was reminded, and I said it earlier, 9/11 was like the last time I think I felt like I felt on Wednesday, where I just had to stop and go, like, man, like I won't forget where I was on 9/11. I won't forget where I was whenever I heard about Charlie Kirk's passing. And you did something.
Yeah. For most of us, we were, in school, or for some of you wiser listeners, you were past the age of high school.
Nice of you to say.
In college when 9/11 happened. But for all of us, unless you're really young and you don't remember, for all of us who were old enough, we remember exactly where we were when we heard about the Twin Towers being struck. And just like with Charlie's life, you'll remember where you were till the day you die. Like I was in San Francisco recording something, and I walked out of the recording studio and looked at my phone and just saw the worst news and over 100 text messages. And I'll never forget. Like, I remember exactly where I was in that studio, just staring at my phone in disbelief.
Yeah.
And when moments like this happen, and I'm not necessarily just comparing Charlie Kirk's life to 9/11, because thousands of people died in 9/11, and it shifted this country into the global war on terror, which we fought for over 20 years. I'm not necessarily doing a direct comparison here, but they are similar in that there are moments that'll shift you.
Yeah.
And when moments like this happen, this week with my team, because Charlie died on the 10th, the day after 9/11. This week with my team at Union, we hadn't gotten the chance to christen our flagpole yet. We just moved into our building, and I'd been saving. I had my flag folded in my office. I'd been saving it for the right moment, and I felt like this was the right moment, obviously. And we went outside. I called everyone outside. I said, we're gonna put the flag up, and I did a quick flag raising ceremony, raised the flag up, and obviously brought it back to half mast. We did the Pledge of Allegiance, and then just gave some quick comments. And we talked about how, when moments like this happen, there were a lot of people the day after 9/11, they'd been working at Morgan Stanley on Wall Street for 15 years. And the next day they quit their job and enlisted in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
They realized, like, I'm going in the wrong direction. My life is serving the wrong purpose. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And when moments like this happen, it is either massive assurance, I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, and I need to run even harder.
Yeah.
Or when moments like this happen, it's a wake-up call for you, and you're like, what have I been doing with myself?
Yeah.
It's like when you're driving in your car and you just like, it's like, where was I the last 5 minutes? It's like, how am I still alive right now? I wasn't even paying attention while I was driving.
Yeah.
You just have these wake-up moments. This is either a encouragement to you, like, I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, or this is a wake-up call for you.
Yeah, that's so good. All right, man. Well, I want to get into this. So, G, let's kick into it. This is the warrior's destiny, how to be the light in a world of darkness. This is what a warrior has that allows him to have this mindset, this reaction to tragedy, right? And what's number one, G?
Yeah, so this is, everything that we've been talking about up to this point on this episode. I'm trying to give people the right mindset. This is how you should respond to these things. It's a strength that God gives us, and God wants us to be a warrior. God doesn't want you to just sit there and cry like a child at every terrible thing that's happened to you. He wants you to have a kingdom response and a warrior's response, and to know that, like, He's victorious.
Yes.
Right? And me sitting here sobbing about, oh God, why would you let this happen? That's not the victorious God.
Right.
right? God is victorious. That is the end. And so here's just a couple things, like 3 key things that will help you with this warrior's mindset, help you think the way to be someone like Charlie and to be someone that'll respond like we're talking about today, that when this happens amongst your ranks, you could say to yourself, I'd be willing to do the same.
Yeah.
Right. So number 1 is absolute faith. This is a concept I think on a lot, and I can't say I've perfectly articulated it yet. And so we'll just continue to talk about it. Absolute faith doesn't mean zero doubt.
Mm-hmm.
I love the story in the Bible. The Roman man says to Jesus, he says, Jesus, I believe, help me in my unbelief.
Yeah.
Right. That's all. Like he said, look, I'll take the next step. Right. But also understanding he didn't have full faith. It's not perfect faith,
right?
But it's absolute faith. Absolute faith is you being willing to step over the river and go into the promised land. Absolute faith is you saying, here's the faith that I do have, and I'm going to plant my life on this, and I'm not going to let myself be shaken. It's easy to have faith when you're up by 30 points.
Right.
It's easy to have faith when you keep knocking the enemy down. It is very difficult to have faith when your house burns down. It is very difficult to have faith when you lose your job. It is very difficult to lose faith on the seventh miscarriage. It's easy to lose faith when these bad things just keep happening to you over and over and over again. Absolute faith is saying, regardless of these things that have happened, regardless of what's going on around me, here's where I'm going to stake myself. Here's where I'm going to plant myself in the ground. It's a decision that you have to make to not waver. And I love the scripture in Romans talking, I don't remember the verse, forgive me, but it's in Romans talking about Abraham. And it says that Abraham had assurance all the way till the end, right? And this is not with past context of like Abraham had already received the promise. This is Abraham saying that like he had assurance even before the things that God had promised came true.
Yeah, that's Romans 4:18-22, when he said that he was as good as dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Apostle Paul talking about.
Read the verse.
All right, I will get that for you. Hold on. I was not prepared for that. Yeah, I'll read it. Give me a sec here. All right, so Romans 4:18-22, it says, against all hope, Abraham in hope believed, and so became the father of many nations. Just as it had been said to him, so shall your offspring be. Without weakening in his faith, he faced the fact that his body was as good as dead, since he was about 100 years old, and that Sarah's womb was also dead. Yet he did not waver through unbelief regarding the promise of God, but was strengthened in his faith and gave glory to God, being fully persuaded that God had power to do what he had promised.
Yeah, fully persuaded. There's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
In the it's either in the NIV or in the NASB, it says fully assured.
Oh,
but it's the same thing, like fully persuaded, fully assured, fully believing that God's going to do what he said he's going to do. And this is, just remember, for Abraham, over 20 years, he's waiting for God's promise to come true.
Yeah.
That's really where the test is in your life. And you've got to decide. Abraham had to decide, right? Am I going to stick I met God, this is Abraham. I met God in the desert 20 years ago. Am I going to stay true to that, or am I going to waver? And this is what it means to be a warrior, that you don't waver when it's hard.
Yeah.
That you choose to not be shaken, that you choose, it's difficult. The road ahead looks tough. It's not going the way that I want it to go. Maybe I should turn back.
Right.
That's not the heart of a warrior. And so this is what absolute faith is. It's not perfect faith. It's not the lack of doubt, but it's you saying, I'm going to stand my ground. I'm going to hold on to my faith in the face of discouragement. I'm going to hold on to my faith even when I get pushed, even when I face trouble, even when people like Charlie Kirk die, when my life is split in half, when the most terrible things that I could think of happen to me. I'm going to stand strong. I'm going to stand in my faith. That's what absolute faith is.
Yeah, and what do you have to have for that? You have to be okay with uncertainty, because what will mess you up is if you think that everything's going to go to your plan, and then the moment something happens, you're like, well, I guess that wasn't meant to be. And this is such a heart issue. I didn't plan on sharing this, but I remember my son is now in kindergarten, but when he was in preschool, I was actually at your house preparing for a podcast, and my wife sent me a video. You'll remember. And she's like, I'm in front of Elijah's preschool, and this is what I see. And she sent me what no parent wants to see, which was the SWAT team stacking up, getting ready to go into my son's school. AKA, and they all had their guns. Why do they do that? Because there's somebody in there that's dangerous. And I had this moment where I was just, I'm like any person. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like my first thought is I want to run down there and like do something about it, but that wouldn't be helpful. I show Garrett the video. I'm like, is there anything you notice here? Because like he knows, way more obviously than me about this sort of stuff. I'm hoping he's going, they're not that concerned because their guns are like, I was just hoping for anything. And you were very straight and said, yeah, it looks like they're getting ready to go in. I'm like, okay. And I remember in that moment, what was going on inside me is one, I have an absolute repulse, like a gag reflex to fear. So I was not going to let fear grip me, but it for a second, it tried to put its fingers around my throat. And what I came back to is I was like, you know what, man? Because what are you doing as a parent? You play out the scenarios. What if there's an active shooter that goes in and does the worst thing and takes my child's life, which is what no parent wants to spend their time thinking about. And what gave me peace in that moment is I just said, I was like, God's in control. And if that happened, then it's not what I want and it's not what I would ever be. But that's clearly what God knew was going to happen. And there's a reason for it. And so I just it came down to me just going, okay, you're in control and I'm not. And that's a really, really hard, like I'm saying it here in a couple seconds on a podcast and it sounds really simple, but from a heart place to say, God, if this goes all the way I don't want, you are still good. I will credit his wife, Erica Kirk, Charlie's wife, her speech that she gave talking about the goodness of God, any post that she's put out talking about the goodness of God. I love that. You talk about a warrior's response to remember what's true whenever everything else has been shaken and you see what stands up, is that you fall back on the nature of God and go, you know what? I know he's good. This is not how I would define good, but guess what? I'm not God. And that is a hard place to be in. But if you want that warrior's mindset of absolute faith, there has to be a release of the things that you feel so certain about, the things that you need to be happy, the things that you need to feel a certain way, or the timeline that you have, and say, you know what, Lord, my life is in your hands. I am the lump of clay on the wheel. You are the potter. Shape me, mold me. Here I am, use me. That's the attitude, and you're going to have to deal with uncertainty. So if you need to know all the time, I'm telling you, you'll miss it. You will not know. Certainty is part of the plan, and as long as you're okay with that and you trust in the one who holds the plan, you're going to be good. But if you need to grip it, there's some pain ahead for you. So I just wanted to highlight that because I think uncertainty is so big. So that's absolute faith. G, what's next?
Number 2 is, and again, this is how to have this warrior's mindset. Number 2 is daily readiness. This is, I do the best I can to push this and create this in our culture at Mighty Men. You only get one day a week to spend time together, but I do all that I can to create this culture in Mighty Men, and I do as much as I can to broadcast this message here on the podcast. And it's that you have to choose every day to prepare, choose every day to keep the mission in mind and not wait until bad things happen to start getting ready. This is Luke chapter 12, verse 35. Be prepared and keep your lamps lit. You are also to be like people who are waiting for their master when he returns from the wedding feast, so that they may immediately open the door for him when he comes and knocks. You have to be like people who are standing ready at the door.
Yeah.
Not like, oh man, this terrible thing happened. What do I need to start doing? Right? You've heard it before. How I wouldn't say I ridiculed, but I certainly had disdain for all the people during COVID who were texting me like, oh man, we got to start getting ready. Like, bro, your goose is cooked.
Right.
Right. Like you should have been ready when this happened. This isn't the time to start getting ready. And this is how you've got to live your entire life. This is what Jesus is saying. This is what your commander is saying. Stand ready. Be prepared. Know that what's coming, it's going to show up one day, and you don't know the day that it's going to show up. It's like Bruce Lee talked about. He said, if you knew, you didn't know when, but if you knew that what was coming for you was a fight to the death, that you would have to fight for your life, how would you train? He said, so why don't you train that way?
Yeah.
Right? And this is the way that you've got to live and act spiritually. Because if you don't, right, if, Bruce Lee is saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to live that way because I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if a fight to the death is coming for me. So if you don't live that way, you know what you're saying is, I hope it doesn't happen to me.
That's exactly right.
And if you live this way spiritually, what you're saying is, and also what you're telling God is, don't choose me.
Right.
I'm not ready.
Yeah.
Right. Don't call on me. I just want to keep my head down.
Yeah.
And that is what the sheep is They keep their head down and they hope that they don't get called upon. They keep their head down and they hope that when the wolves come, it's not them.
Right.
The right response is to say, you know what? I hope this never comes, but if they do, I'll be ready.
Yeah. I mean, I think about a guy like you, and I have a few other friends like this as well now because of the way that we live. You have a go bag. Like if something happened, you wouldn't be like, oh, I got to go find where was that helmet, or where's my weapon at? Where's my Mac? Like you guys live knowing that when some crisis comes to your door, it's not going to like give you a telegram first and say, hey, we're on our way. It's just going to show up, and you've got. I mean, if you talk to any operator, anybody who's been trained at a high level, the speed and readiness at which you guys can prepare from everything from a mag, swapping a mag while you're actually in a gunfight to anything else is massive.
Depending on what clothes I'm wearing, I need about 60 seconds.
There you go.
To be ready to drive right out the door.
Right.
And I'm ready to respond to anything in my home at a second's notice.
Right. And yeah, we won't get into the practicals of that, but I know that for a fact. But I just think about that from a spiritual standpoint and from a life standpoint. What does this thought process look like? If something happens, do you need to like stop, like you said, and process it? Or are you like, oh, okay, great. Like let's like you said, what's next? What's required of me right now? That is the preparation mentality, is that you're not like surprised by pain. You're not surprised when things go wrong. Problems, challenges, difficulty, adversity, tragedy. It's not like, oh my gosh, why is this? Man, this is horrible. Nope. Okay, great. Here we go. Check. Ready to go.
I want to give a second context to daily readiness here.
Okay.
So what we're talking about, the first side of daily readiness here is like train daily physically, train daily spiritually. Why should you train physically? Because if you don't have, and this I won't go into, well, maybe we'll do this on another episode. We did talk about it on the Colonel Grossman episode, but around weapons as a Christian.
Oh, right?
Yeah,
that'd be good.
That you should be trained, you should be capable. That the disciples did have a sword. Jesus said, it's not the time for that, right? But that you should be capable. So you should train physically. You should train spiritually. Be capable. But let me give you the second side, the second context of daily readiness. That comes from James chapter 4, verse 14. Yet you do not know what your life will be like tomorrow, for you are just a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Okay, so one side of daily readiness is I need to be like training continually.
Yeah.
The second side of daily readiness is today's the day.
Yeah.
Today matters.
Yeah.
And today might be the day that I die, and I'm ready for that. That's the second side of daily readiness. This is what James is saying. You don't know what your life's going to be like tomorrow, but as long as it's still today, encourage your brothers. That's what the word says. And as long as it's still today, as long as you still have breath in your lungs, as long as your heart is still beating, that means God has a plan for you. And that plan may be from now until this afternoon, but as long as God has a plan for you, you live that way and you use it to the fullest.
Yeah, very, very good. All right, so we got absolute faith, we got daily readiness, and by the way, I just want to put a pin here. I do want to do that episode because we had a listener from France that reached out and asked us that exact question, because if you know anything about what's going on in France, there's a lot going on from the standpoint of just they've allowed a lot of people into their country, particularly Muslims.
We'll get to it.
So I want to do that episode. All right, so absolute faith, daily readiness. What's number 3, G?
Number 3, and this wraps up the first two. And again, this is not a perfect picture, but this is just a summarization and just a podcast addressing what is a lifelong issue of what does it mean to live a full life. A podcast addressing a lifelong issue of what does it mean to be a warrior. So don't think that this is everything. But to summarize it shortly, the third point is total surrender. God's plan for your life is that you would give everything you have to him. And I want you to just have this understanding about your life, okay? We talked about this recently on the podcast, and I think we were talking about it in Giant Killers recently as well. And it's that the word says that God has more than you can ask, think, or imagine. I feel like I've already seen, I've it's like I can't see all of that, but I've already experienced some of that in my life. From where I was 15 years ago until now, I had no idea. Yeah. Right? I couldn't have imagined that I'd be where I am today. I can't imagine where I'll be 15 years from now. But to get to where I was 15 years ago to where I am now, it's been God's hand on my life, and it's been my own personal faithfulness. Yeah. Of just saying, you know what? I don't know what it is. I know God's got a great plan for me, so I better live that way. Yeah. right? Like we talk, you may not know what your purpose is, but live purposefully. Live as if what you're doing today is so important, and that it will require every bit that you have to get ready for the moments that is coming. I've talked before about how I love the moment from Sandlot, the end of the movie, is you just realize like Benny the Jet's been preparing his whole life for this pickle. And that's how I feel in my own life. My pickle hasn't come yet, but I'm preparing my whole life for the moment that God's preparing me for. And here's how I want you to think about total surrender. There's a couple sides to this as well. And the first part is that you need to give everything you have for your destiny, because God has a great plan for your life. And anywhere that you back up, anywhere you say, that's more than I'd be willing to give. That's harder than I'm willing to experience. I don't want it to be, I just want to serve God and just do this thing. I don't want to do, why are you asking me to do this? Why are you asking me to do that? Any area in your life where you feel that way, where you're not willing to overcome your physical self, you're not willing to overcome your emotions, you're not willing to grow in a certain area of your marriage, you just have this attitude that says, oh, it's okay. Right. It'll be fine. I don't have to deal with that. God will forgive me. Any area that you're doing that, you're missing your destiny.
Yeah.
Because it says that God has more than you could ask, think, or imagine. And the warrior, right? You know why Charlie lived a great life and why Charlie's death is a victory is because he lived his whole life that way.
Yeah.
From the time that he was in high school, he was preparing for this moment. He didn't know this is what it was going to be, but he's been working his way towards this moment to live a great life and to give all that he had. If Charlie had not been someone who could die victoriously, he wouldn't have been who he was. I'm saying he's the type of person that gave his all. And you've got to give your all. Maybe you're not supposed to be well known or some political figure, but let me tell you, most assuredly, your life matters and God wants to do something great with your life. But if you're not willing to give all that you have, you'll miss it.
Yeah, I love that, G. You talked about in like Luke 9:23 about taking up your cross daily and just how you have to quit holding on to what you want. And I know we've highlighted that again, but I'm re-emphasizing it so much because of what you just said. To really pour it all out, man. You sent me a reel this week, and I love that. You sent me this reel from Buds, and I feel very honored that I get to be, I have so much respect for the SEALs. I am not tough by association. I don't have any cool points because I happen to spend a lot of time as the Navy SEAL, but I have so much respect for that culture. And in this reel, I'll tell you, I'll post it to our Instagram at some point this week so other people can see it as well. These are guys and buds talking about how they thought they had given everything they had because you guys have to go 100% all the time in buds. And then whenever you think you don't have any more, you give some more. And these guys were talking about the moment they realized they tapped into more, and they got to the point where they're like, I'll just go until I die. And I've not experienced that, but man, the thought of that and the gift that you've had of experiencing that is what you're saying to people.
There's so much more in you than you think is there. And unless you're willing to really give all that you have, you should see this as the true tragedy. And like I said, that's what this podcast is about. The true tragedy of your life is that you wouldn't live up to everything that God's created you for. The true tragedy of your life is saying, you know what? This is enough for me. I don't want all of it. What I want for every single person, what I want that you would get from this podcast, that every Monday, every Thursday that you're tuning in, you're saying, God, I want more of your ways in my life. You're saying, God, I want to give my all to you. I want to walk and pursue you. Absolutely. Not meaning that I don't have any doubts, but meaning that I'll bet everything on you. Let every single day, my moments, every second that I have, I'm thinking about you. I'm preparing for you. I want to do all that I can to become who you've created me to be. And ultimately, God, I'm going to give you my all.
Thank you very much for listening, guys. Remember to share, subscribe. If you think that this would be something that someone would enjoy, please send it to them. We appreciate it all. If you want to get in touch, you can follow us on Instagram at The Impossible Life. You'll find us on there. You can also email at impossiblelifepodcast@gmail.com. If you have any questions, if you want to get in touch and find out about Garrett's personal or business coaching, that's the way to do it. Thank you again for listening. Go out there, think better, and live the impossible. See you again soon.